David, would you like to introduce Aron and his snake?
Absolutely. Oh, we've got a snake.
Yes, here, I'm
Nice.
going to
There is a
highlight.
snake.
Yes.
Fantastic.
This
See, at
is
RfRx,
an
we
Argentine boa. She's
nice.
just a baby. She will be 8 to 10 feet long eventually, but they grow really slow.
Okay.
And I think she's very pretty.
I'm mesmerized at this point.
Yeah.
She has a really good. She has a really good temperament too, and is used to being
Ooh.
handled.
She is
Okay.
beautiful, and her pattern goes, it looks like all the way around, even on her like underbelly as well. Is that right?
A little bit, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Trying to show you, but yeah, which is rare for a snake.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, she's going to be amusing when she's huge.
How many snakes do you have?
At the moment, we have 75.
Whoa, that's
Wait,
a lot.
I'm sorry. Was the decimal point put like, did I hear that? Or 75, not 7.5, not like 0.75? Like, okay.
I have a quick question. Are you keeping all the snakes, or is this part of a side business? I have to ask.
My wife has a number of breeding pairs that she wants to do. If we get a male for this one, for example, I mean, I could certainly see breeding these, because if we get them that are this pretty, that if they look like her, if she were to get pregnant, boas are different than most snakes. They give birth live, so you don't have to do the incubation and all of that. If she were to give birth, she would probably produce something like 24 babies, and this species, typically right now, $1,000 each.
I clearly
Wow.
went into the wrong business.
Right? Can't believe I spent all that money on school. I should have been
I
buying
know.
snakes.
I have a guidance counselor I need to make a phone call to. I'll be right back.
Damn us in our college educations.
Yeah,
Oh my
I hear you.
goodness. Oh, that's
Well,
really
shoot, I don't
cool.
even know how to follow that up. I mean, what better introduction than literally
Right.
like, I'm just playing with a boa, like,
Yeah.
and not even a feathery one, although that would be its own introduction as well.
Yeah.
But full
Yeah,
on
the feather boas are very rare in the wild.
Almost
Oh my
extinct.
gosh. Yeah.
Indeed.
Well, Aron, welcome. Aron here is the host of Raw Men podcast. There's planned words there in there. Yeah. No, Robin. Okay, just checking. Member of the American Atheists Board of Directors. He has authority. He has previously served as president of the Atheist Alliance of America and ran as a Democratic candidate for Texas District 2 Senate seat. Wow, really? Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So you have a masochist streak. I get it. It's good.
Yeah, I often tell people that I've been in politics just long enough to know that I don't want to be in politics.
Yes. Pretty much.
Yeah.
A vocal critic of theism. I'd be surprised if you were a supporter and being on the show. In creationism, and an advocate of the inclusion of evolution in science curricula. I studied paleontology at the University of Texas in Dallas. Holds an associate's degree from Dallas College, and in 2022 earned a Bachelor of Science in Anthropology from the School of Human Evolution and Social Change at Arizona State University. It's a good school, by the way. Yeah.
It's a good field of study, too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, bias much.
A little.
Yep.
I might be a little biased.
I mean, yeah. Aron produces
Bias.
YouTube videos on the topic of skepticism, free thought, atheism, and I'm assuming snakes at some point.
I am no expert in snakes. These are just easy to keep babies.
A true man of science, already acknowledging his limits of his knowledge.
Yeah.
Awesome sauce. All right. Well, Aron.
Yeah,
beyond
she is already
obviously
too active for me to keep up with, so I'm putting her back.
Oh. Okay. What would happen if you just let her go, would she take up residence someplace in your house? Would she run back to her enclosure? Not run, obviously, slither back to her enclosure.
Well, snakes are very good at getting out. So I've had a lot of snakes, and you have to be very careful about how you keep them and how the enclosure is built and everything. They'll find weaknesses. So, and that's been the big thing every time I've suggested bringing a venomous in. My wife says, "You really think you can handle that?" And because your reticulated python is in the living room, that's not where his enclosure is, but that's where he is.
Oh boy. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've come into the living room and I found my false water cobra draped over the couch. The dogs went berserk one morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I go in, "What the fuck are you barking at?" And I've got a 7-foot boa that's sprawled out over the floor. They're good at finding ways out. So,
I mean, they're kind of built for that. They
I'm
seem
designing.
a little sneaky.
I build a lot of my own enclosures, and my son now has a 3D printer, so he can build some of the attachments that I want. And I'm designing another enclosure for security, so that something that automatically locks, that you can't forget to lock, that it locks automatic when you close the door, it locks automatically. And the kind of doors that the snake can't get through, that they can't bend, they can't find a hole. I have to design my own cord protectors, because a lot of these snakes will figure out how to get through the cord protectors.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Wow. They're like, "Look at these imposter snakes in here. Bite them."
Yeah, they're amazingly good. They have fully connected skeletons, so they can get through very tiny holes you didn't think they could fit through. I had a snake this big around get through space as wide as my fingers.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, how the hell did you do that? But
it's weird. It's like it's like there's nothing inside. They're like hollow or something. I mean, they're not, but
the bones, their bones are all they're malleable. They're a lot of them are hinged, and they're not fixed like they are in us. They can bend in many different ways, and so that enables them to get through holes you wouldn't expect them to be able to fit through.
Wow.
I built an enclosure, and I put one of my wife's mandarin rat snakes, beautiful black and red, or excuse me, black and yellow snake. I put it in there. I say, "See how perfect this is?" And it found a crack in the enclosure that I built. I didn't see the crack there, and it just disappeared into that crack.
Oh.
And she said, "You had to fuck around and find out, didn't you?"
I would just name all my snakes Fatho. I mean, really, at this point, yeah.
So I had a friend I have a friend, some of you may know him, Larry Mendoza. He's got like 40 snakes, and many of them are venomous. But he obviously has a more secure system than any of the enclosures I have. And so I'm working on it. You can't make mistakes with these. They're like, "Damn it, where'd the cobra go?"
Yeah. No.
And that was a funny thing. There was a reptile convention in Houston last year, and an albino king cobra came up missing somewhere in the convention center.
Oh.
Yeah.
I suspect foul play. Did someone steal him?
Well, I'm sure that would be tempting. I don't think that was the suspicion. They're just good at getting out, and you wouldn't believe what they can hide in. How tiny they can make themselves, the kind of things that they can fit into.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I hope TSA didn't find him in someone's backpack on the way home or something.
Speaking of TSA, I'm upset with them because my last trip, they would not let me bring on my emotional support python.
What? How insensitive. Does he have a little tube-shaped vest?
That would be difficult to arrange.
I don't generally sign off on those letters, but I would make an exception for this.
It's like when I had my emu, and the city told me to put it on a leash. And I remember just staring at the guy and blinking a couple of times. I'm like, do you see this bird? How the fuck you put a leash on this?
What in the world?
Hmm.
I love that.
They
I
couldn't
really want
handle
to
it.
see
I
this.
would take my emu down to the park every day, or not every day, twice a week. I would take my emu down to the park, and we go. He would, as soon as his feet hit the grass, he would run at full speed, which is amazing. And I would have to bring a bicycle just so that I could catch up to him eventually, because he only runs for like a minute, and then we spend the next hour or so sauntering around the park, and it was really nice. But it did freak people out to see a bird that big just wandering through the park.
Wow.
Because we knew he would rear up, he'd be 6 inches taller than me.
Wow, that's incredible. I did not realize emus were that tall, because you are a tall person. That's
Yeah,
a lot of
he
emu.
could reach 6'6", though most of the time he wouldn't be standing, tall as he can be.
So you have been a keeper of exotic pets for some time. I kind of had this idea in my head that, part of deconverting from Christianity for some people is having pet snakes, but I'm getting the sense now that there's more to this story for you. How did you get into all this?
I want to say that my first exotic pet was probably my worst experience. I got a pet when I was in my 20s that I don't have the wherewithal to keep that thing now. And I have 75 snakes. But
What was it?
this one lizard was more than I could handle. And so I do not recommend, fantastic, amazing though they are, I do not recommend the Malaysian water monitor.
Ooh.
They're
How big do those get?
7 to 9 feet, somewhere between 70 and 140 pounds. They have an anticoagulant venom, and they are man eaters.
Well, that is a choice for a first exotic pet.
Yeah, unfortunately, he got out. We had
Oh
him on
my
an
goodness.
enclosed back porch. He had a kiddie pool and a big old tree branch, and all these things to have the nice. It was a fully enclosed area. We thought he'd be really good there, but there was an aluminum back door, and he kind of like grabbed the corners of it and bent the door. So I come in to feed him, and the door is just bent wide the hell open. Oh crap! So pretty soon somebody sees him somewhere, and then there's the police get called, and reptile handlers from the zoo, and a 50-foot hook and ladder truck, and like both newspapers and 3 TV news channels and all of that, because this was Des Moines, Iowa in 1987. And then I end up on the news with my lizard, and the police didn't know anything else to do with it but shoot it, of course. Yeah. So that was kind of a tragic story.
Wow.
My lizard got out and the police shot it.
That's terrible.
Yeah, the
It
only
wasn't
the only amusing
attacking
thing
someone.
was when the Weekly World News, which still existed at that time, when the Weekly World News picked up the story, the headline was "Police Do Battle with Giant Prehistoric Reptile." And then later on there was some kind of documentary, and I can't remember what the documentary show, 60 Minutes, or something like that. Not 60, not as serious as 60 Minutes, but there was some other kind of documentary show that was on in the late 90s or so. And one of the questions that they asked, they said, "Do you ever try to verify any of your stories?" And the guy said, "No, we don't ever try to verify any. People just call them in, and we print it up. But we know that there was this guy that had this big ass lizard that the police shot it, and so we know that one is true." So I am the only true story in the Weekly World News.
That's got to be worth something.
That
Do
is
you
a
get a
claim to
special
fame right
award
there.
for that? It's like the only true story.
And it's a sad thing. Somebody was offering a Nile monitor, which isn't as big as the Malaysian water monitor. They were just offering a Nile monitor, and she was so beautiful. They're normally black and silver, but this one was black and yellow, and I fell in love with her. Such an adorable little baby, and the only one wanted $35 for it. I can afford that, right? And unfortunately, my wife by that time knew what a Nile monitor is, and so she had to show me the logistics of what. You know how much harder it is to keep a lizard than it is to keep a snake? It's just lizards require a whole lot more. And so my wife is showing me the size of the enclosure that a 6-foot lizard is going to need.
How big does that enclosure need to be?
It's huge. It's like 8 by 12.
Oh,
something
wow.
like that for a lizard that's 6 foot long, because they're more accurate, they're more active, and it's not something like it's not like you can turn it loose in the house, because this is a bad juju. My water monitor got loose at the house that we were at, and I remember hearing this cat going and I watch and I see my lizard coming out in the living room with this horrible gait that he's got, with all these eagle talons on it, because they're just equipped for death. They've got the tail that'll break. A good grown up can break both a man's legs with a snap of its tail. Then it's got the hiss, which is just the embodiment of evil. And that was my problem when I got the thing. When people said we need to get rid of this lizard, we're going to sell you this lizard because we can't have it in the house anymore. They had it in this big old cage in the living room, and they pull a blanket. They had it covered with a blanket because it would thrash whenever it saw people. And so I came in, I lift the blanket up, and I look at this lizard, and it hisses at me with such a deep-throated, and the strings of saliva from the top jaw to the bottom jaw, that I know that this is the strings of venom that, and I can see all the way down into his stomach because it's hollow. It's so primitive. And I remember looking at this monstrous lizard, and I was like, "You're evil. I love you." For a young testosterone poisoned man, it's like to get a hold of this. Damn, what a beast. And they told me not to underestimate it, and I did a bunch. It kept showing me that it could do things I didn't think it could do. I didn't know that it could stand up on its hind legs. I didn't know it could jump straight in the air. And when he snapped at me, and I yanked my hand back, and just two of the teeth scraped my middle finger on my right hand, just to scrape as I'm pulling, and the jaws clamped, but two of the teeth touched my finger as I'm yanking it back.
Ooh.
And even on that little bit of a glancing blow, I was bleeding like water for 2 days.
Oh, wow.
If that had actually gotten a hold of me, I wouldn't be able to express my opinion.
Yeah, I was about to say, we need to see your hands. They're intact here.
Yeah, ironically, this is the finger he bit. And this is also the finger that was bitten off by one of my dogs.
Oh,
I've got a scar right here. And it's funny that I had to put this fingertip in a baggie to go to the hospital and have them sew it back on. And the way that they sewed it back on was that the woman was using a hook needle, and she would hook in through the flesh and then try to push the hook out through the fingernail. And I was like, you're not going to be able to push that through the fingernail. Rethink your plan.
No.
And I'm doing and they're having me hold my finger on so that they can do this. But this is the one that gets bit. This is the one that's been bitten 3 times. Only come off once. It's been bitten
only once.
Yeah. This one has been cut off. This one gets cut off. This one gets bit off. So my wedding finger, chopped off with a knife once upon a time, chopped off with a garage door opener another time, and what was the third time? Oh yes, one of our boas got away, and I was trying to get the boa down because it was on the curtain, and I leaned a little bit too much into the window, put my weight on the window to reach this boa, and then the window collapsed, and the glass cut. So third time, but it's always this one. So I've got 3 amputation scars down the middle of this one finger.
Wow. So if
Yeah.
anybody was thinking about getting some monitor lizards or boas, just think about how attached you are to your fingers and how attached you want them to be to your body. Wow,
Boas are
that's
not going to hurt your
incredible.
fingers. I
I
have
love that.
my biggest snake at the moment is still the imperator. It's soon to be the reticulated python, but it's still the imperator because my retic grows an inch a week. But it's still my boa imperator, 15 pounds, 7 feet. And there was a time when I opened his cage, he comes out of his tub and he's thinking it's food time. And I was going to say to him, I was going to pet him with the hook, because that's what you do. You touch him with the hook and let him know, no, this is not food time. This is, this is something else. And this is the simple thing that I'll learn. If you touch him with the hook 2 times, and then realize, okay, this is not food time. But I couldn't find the hook. So I thought, oh, I'll just reach a wide angle around him.
Oh.
He's 7 feet. I'm not reaching a wide enough angle around him. And he nailed me. But the thing is, he's a very good snake. He didn't mean to hit me. And as soon as he bit me, he realized it was the wrong thing. Instant he hit me, he starts pulling back. He starts pulling all 90 teeth back out of my arm. And I'm like, what a good snake. I mean, he didn't want to bite me. He's trying to let go. And you can get some of these snakes, if they hit you and they didn't mean to hit you because it's your fault. If you get bit, really it is. One of my pythons just freaked out and wouldn't eat again for 6 weeks. I was dangling a mouse like an idiot. I was dangling my mouse with my fingers instead of tongs. This was many years ago. Okay, this is when I'm learning, right? I'm dangling a mouse with my tongs, and my snake misses the mouse, hits my hand, and she freaked out about it and felt so bad about it she wouldn't eat again for 6 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah.
And then would you go visit her and say, who's a good snake? You.
I will tell you that keeping these snakes, you develop a different type of appreciation. Like my wife, a couple of years ago, she was aphidophobic. She really was. It was her idea I had a couple of snakes when we got together. She couldn't even look at them. So I ended up having to, give my daughter back her python or whatever. We don't have this corn snake anymore. Okay, well, just don't get any more. But she decided that she was going to tackle her aphidophobia head on, and that what she discovered in taking care of them and raising them as babies, you develop a very different kind of a feel for them. They're for their attitude comparatively. We have a handful of like different ones, different examples of the same species, and we know how their attitudes are, how their behaviors are, which ones we can appreciate, which ones were raised to be, that we got as adults that were raised to be livestock versus the ones who know how to be pets. There's a huge difference. I recommend buying a snake as a baby and raising it up, because then you know what you get. And if you're always handling it with respect, following simple rules, give it a few days after you feed it and that sort of thing. You don't handle it so much that you stress it out, all of that. Show the animal respect and care and consideration, and they will return that.
I love that. That is good advice for relationships with humans and other animals, probably.
I'll put it this way. A friend of mine who runs a Intrepid Exotics channel, just words of wisdom that I thought was so applicable to all exotic animals. Anything that can feel stress can feel comfort.
Oh,
so simple.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and speaking of which, now that we're on the topic of science, I could actually talk about snakes this whole time because I find them fascinating. My dad used to keep snakes when I was a kid, and iguanas too. Those were super fun.
Did you know they're venomous as well?
Yes. Like iguanas are like they'll get you. They're a little aggressive. I don't think they can break your legs with their tail, but they can sure cut you up with their tails. And I was thinking, I thought it was like a bacteria actually, if they bite you that would make you sick. Is it actually like a
It
venom?
is venom.
Oh, I didn't
It is
realize
a
that.
hemotoxic venom. If we're talking about the Malaysian water monitor, and I don't know what it is with iguanas, because what iguanas is vestigial.
Mhm.
They have remnants of their venomous capacity. They're still considered mildly venomous, but they were more so in the past. Their evolutionary
Ooh,
ancestors were more venomous than they are now. And
interesting.
interestingly, even though they're very closely related, monitor lizards are venomous, and they're in the same super family as the beaten Mexican bearded lizard and the what do they call it? The Gila monster, right? But
Ooh.
their venom glands are in their lower jaws, and snakes, their venom glands are all of them in their upper jaws. So not related, independently evolved.
Interesting. Okay, now
Hmm.
see, this is why science is fun. I would 100% come to your science class and learn about this stuff. And this is why you make great content. Um, tell
Did you
us
see?
about that.
Can I just
Yep.
pitch this for
Yeah.
since we've been talking about, if you're interested? I did
Yeah.
a video series called Aphidophobia. It's a small playlist, three episodes, and I go into the evolution of snakes. If you find any of this interesting at all, you will probably like that playlist.
I'm down. I'm
Ooh, I'm gonna
gonna
find that
find it
now.
and post it in the chat.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you,
much.
Helen. Yes. Oh, that's awesome. I have not actually watched that, and now I want to. Oh, I see it. Yeah, here it is. Oh, nice. Okay, excellent. While Helen is pulling that up for the chat, tell us, how did you get into basically doing all of this educational content? Obviously, you went back to school to get a second degree, not just in paleontology. You went back for anthropology. I, I would say, how did you get interested in all this? But obviously, you're a person that is interested in learning and science. But say
Yeah,
more.
this is a different story than you might expect. So,
I love those kind of stories.
yeah, my vocation was very different once upon a time. I have been accused of looking like a biker. There was a time when I lived in a place where not everybody I knew had a car, but everybody I knew had a motorcycle. So I ran a tattoo shop, and that was my full-time gig. I lived in a little small town, military town in Arizona, but I didn't get a lot of military clientele, strangely. And I think this is because I was young and cute. Most of my clientele were beautiful young ladies between 18 and 24 years old, all wanting tattoos they can hide. I had like the best job. Good work if you can get it. But there was a problem when I moved out of that little town and I moved into, a big city in Dallas. And the last tattoo that I did professionally was used by the police to identify the body of a drug dealer who was murdered by people I knew.
Ooh.
Yeah, and this is while I had just become a single parent, and I realized how judges might look negatively on some aspects of my life. So, I mean, I'm building a chopper in my dining room. I have 3 strippers living in my apartment, 2 ex-cons and two wolf hybrids. And I'm just thinking, how are people going to look at me? So I get a job doing like call-in tech support. That's nice and safe and nerdy, right?
So you went from tramp stamps to tech support,
Yeah.
which I I would love to be on like the interviewing end of that conversation. It's like, so explain this gap.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember there was this girl who was she was like 18 and she's very shy, and she doesn't, she wants to be very intimate about, the private tattoo that she's doing. Right. And I've got her sprawled out on this table, and because of the angle, she wants me to do a lion lying in the grass, but she says I don't have to tattoo the grass. So the positioning required to put this piece of art where, I have one leg over here, I've got another one over my shoulder, and like this, and suddenly 5 of my biker buddies come walking in the door at the same time. Like, well, that's good ink. Yeah, it was a very, very different life. So I get into something more defensible. And this, of course, is an internet related job. I'm doing, ISP support. And so I find myself I have unlimited overtime, and I'm doing the simplest job in the world. So I get to take calls while also browsing however I want, whatever I want. And this was back when Usenet still existed. And I got onto Talk.Origins, which was a discussion group on the Usenet groups, news groups, they were called at the time. And I was arguing with mundane names like Richard Carrier and P.Z. Myers and John Harshman and people like that I eventually met, of course, in real life. But I'm doing this like 12 hours a day. I'm basically arguing with people, like saying, yeah, just turn the computer off and turn it on again, and just continuing conversations. And I was on a steep, and I mean a steep, learning curve. At one point, my job put me on the night shift. I get 3 calls a night, but I'm there all night, every night. And so I read. I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read the Avestas of Zarathustra. For 8 to 10 years, I am on a very steep learning curve. Going from a biker tattooist to where I am now, kind of. So somebody suggests that because I'm doing this computer industry, that maybe I should go and get a Microsoft certification. Okay, fine. That's the logical thing to do. So I walk into the college, but I walk into the wrong building because I don't know the campus. And I happened by sheer dumb luck to walk into the science building, looking for wherever it is that I'm supposed to be. And I happened across a paleo display. And I recognize not only every one of the fossils, but I know the names of the scientists involved, and I know the controversies of each of the stories involved. I know everything about all of these fossils. And I thought, why do I know all of this and I'm not using it? So I didn't sign up for the MCSE certification. I signed up as a geoscience major.
I love it when people go to school to learn about the thing that they are passionate about rather than the thing that makes a lot of money. But you're hearing that from someone who has a collection of useless degrees, so take that with a big old grain of salt.
Yeah, it was a long
that,
way
though.
in coming to get from where I was to where I am. And there was an awful lot about me that had to change. Just growing as a person. You might be surprised to find out that being a biker in the 80s is quite a bit different than being a respectable science advocate in this century, in this decade. Go figure.
Well, I can imagine. I kind of like that, though. I mean, you're not the kind of like stuffy, boring, like kind of very professorial type that sometimes is the stereotype for someone that's, oh good, here he comes, he's going to tell us about evolution and paleontology. Like, you're not boring. I like a little bit of a character in my lectures. So I don't know, I feel like that adds something to it.
Well, thank you kindly.
Yeah. Well,
if I can
thank
just
you.
one last tale. I
Yes,
remember that there was
please.
this girl that came to me. She wanted to have a tattoo. She said she could only have one tattoo. She's going to put this one tiny tattoo in the one place no one can see. The only place that her G-string will allow her to put a tattoo where no one will see it. And it's right at the top of the crack of her butt. And
Sounds
so
painful.
she wants an ankh of all things. And so I made one out of stone. I had some equipment that was very good at doing detail work. So I put an ankh right on her coccyx, right, this little bitty ankh, and I had it shaded and everything. It was beautiful. And I asked her a week or so later, how does she like it? She goes, if I had any idea how many people I was going to show this thing to, I would have had you put it on my forehead.
That's
and
priceless.
applying that tattoo was also amusing. You know, whenever anybody would walk in the door and see me working, like, how do I get that job?
Very carefully. Okay, I love it. I love it. Well, okay, earlier in the pre-show, we were talking about some of the kind of wide-ranging topics that you talk to people online, and you were regaling us with silly stories of comments and questions that you get from people. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what are the kinds of misconceptions or ideas that you try to go and combat online? And can you give us some examples?
Well, nobody knows what any of the words mean that they're using. That's always a problem. When Ken Ham and Kent Hovind and others of their ilk say that we accept microevolution, but we reject macroevolution. Ironically, the reverse is true. They don't know what these words mean. They actually accept macroevolution because they accept speciation. Wholeheartedly, they accept speciation. What they don't accept is they don't accept that mutations provide new information for the genome. So they actually reject micro and embrace macro. And they cannot understand that because they don't know the difference, because they don't know what words mean. But the worst description, I remember when I was trying to explain evolution to my mom, and she's forbidden to believe it. So she actually used this sentence on me, this exact sentence verbatim. She said, I believe what I believe because that's what I believe, and I'm not going to believe what you believe because it's not what I believe.
Oh,
So now,
wow.
how do you argue with that logic? So
Tautology for the win, Alex. Yeah.
So she went to her church and she complained that I was trying to get her to believe in evolution. And someone is talking to her saying, well, we're Mormons. We don't have to be creationists. You can accept evolution. That's fine. That's not going to risk your salvation. Because Mormons are not young earth creationists. Even when they are creationists, they're not young earthers. So my mother comes back and tells me she's got permission from the church to believe now, which that already is a concept that I have a hard time with. But then she says, I believe in evolution now. What is it?
Oh, no. Ouch.
Ouch.
So I said to her, well, tell me why don't you tell me what you think it is, and when I see a problem, I'll jump in to correct. And she says, okay, evolution is when a bunch of molecules gather together to make a man, and a bunch of other molecules gather together to make a fish.
I love it. It sounds like
I mean,
they're going to a wedding or something. They're gathering together today to
make a
watch this
fish.
union.
And I have to think, you've seen Rudy Zallinger's March of Progress. You've seen that painting going from like proconsul to modern man. You know that it's not accurate because it's linear in ways that they're supposed to be offshoot branches, and they didn't depict them as offshoot branches. But still, you've seen that thing. At what point do you get a random assortment of molecules that accidentally form into a human being? But this is the state of education.
Yes, I think that's exactly right. This is the issue. People are beginning with such a bizarre misconception of what a lot of these scientific concepts are that even when they later encounter them, they are not able to receive them because they don't realize that it's something completely different than what they were told it was.
Here's one of the big problems that I have is they don't understand processes. So creationists don't have any concept of emergence, the principle of emergence. So if you've got a natural process at work, there's going to be a product and production stages. If you've got natural selection working at all, you're going to have some lineages that aren't going to be able to, continue to compete forever, and then you're going to have improvements in those that remain, that sort of thing. They don't understand how any of that works, because the only way that they think anything can happen is because somebody told that thing to happen. So they don't understand that a process can produce a result. They think it's dice rolls. All these molecules accidentally fell together to be something as complex as you, like a tornado in a junkyard that formed a 747. That is somebody, those are the words of somebody that has no fucking clue about what biological processes are. So you have absolutely no idea what evolution is, because evolution is reproductive populations over many generations, and it's not just the individual. That's another thing we'll get to in a moment. But if you had any concept at all that there's a process at work, then there's going to be a not a goal, but I mean, there's going to be an improvement in whatever the surviving lineage is. That it's not utterly random like they insist. And they insist that it should be utterly random. They have no idea. I mean, just you roll the dice 1,000 times and you're going to come up with double sixes all 1,000 times. I don't have enough faith to believe that. That's another problem. They have to pretend that I am the one that has faith. They have to pretend that I believe in evolution. And when they say they believe, that don't mean that they think it's true. It means that they make believe. They have to convince themselves to make believe something that is not evidently true. And so they think that that's what we're doing too. So I am accused all the time of having blind faith in the religious dogma of evolutionism and scientism, and that any position you hold for any reason at all is always a faith and is therefore indefensible, because I know that faith is indefensible.
That's an interesting premise to begin with, coming from people who have not given up their faith-based beliefs in whatever tradition they're invested in. I mean, it seems like an odd way to start the argument, basically saying, well, we're both beginning with a false premise.
So the argument tack that I like to take, and I was trying this with somebody today, they were telling me that you can't convince me of evolution because in order to believe in evolution, you first have to assume all these other things. Like, no, all of that is wrong. Let's just show you how we do this. Let's not assume anything first. Let's not have any prerequisite conclusions. We'll have two hypotheses we're going to compare. We have yours, which is magic man done it with magic words, abracadabra. And then we have mine, natural processes. Okay. And we're going to weigh both of these hypotheses and check both hypotheses to see which ones are supported, the best supported by the most evidence, which ones explain the most, the most reliably, which ones can survive the best, the most testing or whatever. And which one explains nothing ever and can't withstand any scrutiny. Wink. Okay.
Which one is it?
Yeah. The problem is they already know where they are in this. I have Aesop's fables and I want to believe Aesop's fables. And I don't like to understand things because science is hard.
Yeah. Well, and I find that interesting, though, too, that people continue to come and engage with you on this. What do you think? Why do you think they continue to engage? Like they know you're not. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
It does strike me. I was curious, Aron, that in some of the ways that Nkara was mentioning this as well, around like that they begin with a similar structure, And it's almost like all knowledge must begin with an authority structure. Like everything comes, vertically, and that's just how everybody knows something. And so the substitute for their God would then therefore be the scientist or whoever. And see, you've got the same level of faith because, again, vertical knowledge streams.
The beautiful thing about it is yes, it is vertical, and we are talking about complete opposite perspectives. So they're arguing for an administrator orchestrating from the top down, and I'm arguing for emergence, patterns of complexity arising from the bottom up, according to natural processes. So it is absolutely opposite. And it's funny that we can be so opposite on so many different things, where they only believe in authority, and they'll do like William Lane Craig has often said that that if science and the Bible conflict, then science got it wrong. There's not even a question about are there certain instances where no, he just assumes the Bible's absolutely correct because, and he's admitted to this, if there's one chance in a million that it could be true, that'd be so awesome that we're just going to assume that it is true anyway, and just say that it's true when it evidently isn't. They're all about authority. Facts be damned. Whatever the authority says, and when you have proof that the authority is wrong, the authority is right because it's an authority. Like the church marquee said, when your faith is big enough, facts don't matter.
Yikes. Big yikes.
Big yikes. Yeah, so it's like when you say you don't know what happened, right? Well, there's your boot prints going into the building, there's your fingerprints on the gun, there's your blood is on your hands. It's like gun is registered to you, just
right.
All this stuff, and you're saying you have no idea what happened. Well, the facts disprove you, but those who believe in authority that's the authority, so doesn't matter how much.
I have scenes from his Dark Materials going through my head right now. It's exactly that structure. It's like we are determinative of all truth claims.
Yeah, and I just like the way that Carl Sagan put it. I wish that when he did Cosmos, unfortunately, when he did the Cosmos series, at least when they redid it in the DVD version that I have access to, he had all of these other images on screen instead of his face, because I so wanted to include his face saying these words, that arguments from authority are worthless. Whatever is inconsistent with the facts, no matter how fond of it we are, must be discarded or revised.
I love
Brilliant.
me some Sagan.
Yeah. I want that on a t-shirt.
Ooh, I feel like we could make that happen. We're coming up with lots of good merch ideas in this episode. I mean, that one can get in the list for sure.
Yeah.
Now, do you feel like there are any particular topics or concepts that lend themselves to kind of introducing people to thinking in this way in terms of processes rather than just this sort of top-down kind of way that they might be used to thinking?
Again, as Sagan pointed out, it's impossible to convince a creationist of anything, because they don't have a desire to understand. What they have instead is a deep-seated emotional need to believe. And so I have gotten many people to admit to me in one way or another, they phrase it in different ways, but they've and this is not true of everybody. But there have been a handful of people who have confessed to me in one way or another that they are going to continue to believe what they want to believe because they have an emotional need to believe that thing, even if they know that it's not true. Even if they have proof that it's not true, they're going to believe it anyway. That's a hard thing for me to wrap my head around. How can you know that you're wrong and believe that you're right? And this, some believers have expressed as a triumph of faith.
It's something.
Well, to give you an example, William Lane Craig, not William Lane Craig, William Jennings, I think it was William Jennings Bryan from the Scopes monkey trial. He was also a presidential candidate in the 1920s or so thereabouts.
Yeah.
He said, if the Bible said that Jonah swallowed the whale, I would believe it.
Wow.
And there was a preacher more recently that I've copied many times from a documentary called Questioning Darwin, who said that if he found somewhere in the Bible a passage that said 2 + 2 = 5, I wouldn't question what I'm reading in the Bible. I would believe it and do my best to work it out and understand it.
That just seems like such a waste of the abilities that we have as people to observe the world and think and reason.
We understand that the argument from authority is a logical fallacy. They don't. Believers, notice this. Every logical fallacy, look up any list of logical fallacies online. And when you read the descriptions, remember which religious argument you heard that in. Because every logical fallacy has been used as an argument for God. And every argument for God is a logical fallacy. That's all of them. That's the best of them. William Lane Craig, for example, in his best argument, the Kalam cosmological argument, wherein neither of the premises is necessarily true and the conclusion is a non sequitur.
Oh yeah, and do you want to describe that for anybody that's not familiar with the Kalam?
Okay, so anything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. Conclusion, the cause is God. Well, the problem is, first of all, anything that begins to exist, when did God begin to exist? There's a problem. Then the second premise, the universe began to exist. No, it didn't. I know, hold on. My boa decided that she still wanted to come out and play. So I opened the door again and she got up on a lamp and almost, she's out again. Right. And then the conclusion, the universe had a cause, therefore God.
Yeah.
You're going to be a little bit more explicit here on step 2.
Yeah. Step 2, profit. Or like,
how do we
a miracle happens. Profit.
Yeah. Something happened, therefore magic invisible man.
Yeah.
But that's all of them. That's Paley's watchmaker. That's literally every argument for God that all of these philosophizers want to pull up. They are all similarly flawed, just that badly. Because remember, the one I just described, that has been popularly presented as the best argument for God. That and what is it? I'm trying to remember what if you're wrong? The what if you're wrong argument.
Oh, Pascal's wager.
Pascal's wager. Thank you so much.
Of course.
And I have to point out to people that, well, if you're wrong and you're Christian, then because you believe that God has partners or that God has children or that Jesus is not just a prophet of God, but also to some degree God himself, then you're going to Muslim hell. And if you're Muslim, then you didn't accept Jesus as your personal savior, as the Son of God, as the incarnation of God, you don't even believe that Jesus died on the cross because Islam doesn't believe that. And you have to believe that in order to be saved. So you're going to Christian hell. So Pascal's wager fucked those up. But then you got the other option that you could just wake up in the next life as a cow because you failed to achieve Krishna consciousness. So Paley's failure was that he completely neglected to look at other religious perspectives, that you don't just have damnation, but you've got stagnation, like in Sheol or Hades, or you've got a reincarnation, whether it's as progressive other lives or as other species or what have you. But this every argument for God is just that bad, and they're all based on the same kind of ridiculous thing. It's not just an honest misunderstanding. It can be that, and for some people it is. But what I encounter, the people who are the people who defend the faith, it's more than that. It's more dishonest than that. It's based not just on a simple misunderstanding, it's based on a deliberate misunderstanding. It's based on they don't want to know what they don't want to believe. They already know that what they believe is not true, but they're going to believe it anyway because it makes them feel all squishy inside to pretend that they're best friends with the most powerful genie imaginable, and that they won't really die, and that if they really, really need to, they can call in a favor so that 2 + 2 becomes 5.
So when you're creating your content and having conversations with people about this, you have no illusions about changing their own minds about it, right? You're doing this for other people's benefit, I presume.
Well, I don't have any expectations. It has happened, though.
Hey.
Yeah.
So
What happened in one case was I got a message from somebody 2 years after our argument. He told me that he realized during our argument that he was right, but that he wasn't able to admit that in the moment. He admitted it 2 years later.
interesting. Huh. Did he say what led him to the point where he felt comfortable admitting that to himself and or to you later? Like what else changed in his life?
I wish I could remember the details in his case. I remember what it was for my wife. It was seeing a pangolin.
Oh, how? Tell us more about that.
A pangolin is a mammal with scales. Well, technically, they're scutes, but that's how does a mammal have all over body wide scales? It's a mammal. That's something reptiles have. And there's other things that would throw people off, like the platypus and echidna. When European scientists first saw a platypus, they thought it was a hoax. How can you have a mammal that lays eggs? You can't have a venomous mammal. That's a reptile thing. Well, now we know of multiple venomous mammals that they didn't know about yet. There's even a venomous primate.
Ooh, which one is that?
If I remember correctly, it's the slow loris.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great Dr. Seuss character.
And then it turns out that shrews are venomous, as is a Solenodon, which is very shrew-like. And they even have the grooves in the teeth for the venom to go down.
I love that it always comes back around to like animals and nature when you're describing things, because what I like about this is you have so many concrete examples that are interesting and fun, and this is not abstract at all as you're describing this to people. These are obvious examples, and I love that this actually by itself changed someone's mind on something. I wish that we learned this in school. I didn't get this in school. Some people may get this in school. I grew up in Texas, so you know how it is.
I wish that people had some idea of taxonomy, because not only is it taxonomy was the first evidence of evolution. Carolus Linnaeus, who was a creationist himself, tried to classify all living things, and he realized that his taxonomic system was revealing a family tree, that there's a hierarchy of lineage of ancestral groups branching into more and more and more daughter groups. And this is a family lineage. This is not created kinds. And he had no way to explain that. If people had any idea how taxonomy works at all, evolution is the answer for that.
Well, right. Like this, if you study the history of science, you understand this was not a big plot for people to try and, unseat religion. This was the logical progression of knowledge as people found out, as you said, about taxonomy and about, oh, there are a bunch of animals that are extinct now that we didn't know about. And oh, the earth is tremendously older than we realized. Aha! Combine these two ideas together. And
The brilliant thing was the order in which these things were discovered, because there were a handful of people, only a handful of people who knew, and I mean a literal handful of people who knew what fossils were when Carolus Linnaeus wrote his book. So he didn't know. He didn't have the first clue about fossils. So he concludes evolution without any reference to fossils whatsoever. And he concluded that there must be this kind of a lineage. There has speciation has to be happening. But where do you get new species? You can get multiple derivatives by mixing different breeds. You can get different breeds of dogs or pigeons or cattle or whatever. But how do you get a different species where it's no longer able to breed with others of its kind anymore, right? And it's like a century later, Darwin comes up with the first two mechanisms that actually work to that end when he wrote the book on the origin of species. So it's funny that another century later, we have creationists accepting the speciation happens. Sure, speciation is observed, but that's not macroevolution. Yeah, that is actually literally macroevolution. That's exactly what that is.
that's how
so
we
they have
all
to
got
keep moving
here.
their old goalposts.
Yes.
So that Ken Ham will now say that not only, when I was a kid, they used to say, well, we've never seen a new species evolve. But then, a number of other people in that person's congregation would say, we have a bunch of times, so stop saying that. So then they have to move it up. So then, like Kent Hovind said, that the kinds definition is delineated not at species, but at genus or the family level. And then Ken Ham went even further. It could be at the level of order, but only arbitrarily wherever we want it to be, and only as long as it doesn't apply to people. And by the way, I have a Argentine boa just inches from my nose, crawling on my microphone. She's adorable.
Oh, I think she needs to join us. And
she's so afraid of me. She just crawls right up to me.
Oh, it sounds terrible. I love it. Now, this kind of gets into a recent thing you had to do with some comments Tucker Carlson made, I believe.
And I have to wonder about this because people have told me that Tucker Carlson understands evolution, but I also know that Tucker Carlson is a pathological liar. So how many times has he gone on television and lied and then admitted to lying, or someone else admits on his behalf that he's lying, Rupert Murdoch admitted that he paid all of his people to lie. So
oh yeah,
what is Tucker Carlson's story? I don't believe for a moment that he actually understands half of what he says he understands, because he always looks like a confused dog. If he had the ability to move his ears, one would be perked up and his head would be cocked sideways. That's just how he looks at everything. He's admitted that he doesn't have a TV. He doesn't have a computer. How do you learn anything? I mean, you could learn from books, but Tucker Carlson, really? Reading?
Yeah,
you see him with
I
books?
don't think that's probably not what's happening.
Yeah, I can see Thomas Jefferson or Thomas Paine with books, not Tucker Carlson. I see Tucker Carlson more in the Kanye West category. But I don't read books because I don't know, what was his excuse? Reading books is for people who think they're smart. I don't know what the hell.
Well, we wouldn't want to accidentally be smart.
There is such a lack of respect for intellectualism in this country. It's disturbing me. I remember talking to my dad many years ago, way back in the 80s, about how a friend of mine pursued his education. She was coming right up to my face. A friend of mine pursued his education, and he became a professor of medieval history at this university. And I thought that was, that's nice. He's a professor. And my dad said, well, he's got book smarts, but he ain't got no common sense. What a waste of life. And when I explained to my dad what it was that I'm studying, and I'm explaining passionately what drives me, what I find so exciting, he says, well, I just got one question. How do you stay awake? That's so boring.
Ooh.
What do you do with that?
Yeah, like, I guess this isn't for you.
And this is the guy whose topic of conversation on every day of his life is limited to hunting, fishing, and football. 3 topics I could not pretend to be interested in on my best day.
Wow. You would think that things like at least some of this knowledge of the natural world would be relevant to someone that was doing a lot of hunting and fishing. Like, how can you spend all that time out?
What I noticed from my whole family was that if it was outside of the personal experience of Grandpa, they didn't discuss it. There was never a discussion of history beyond the Civil War. There was never a discussion of world politics, unless there was some number of Americans involved in that plane crash. Why do we care? We want to know how many Americans were on it. Otherwise, nothing. Art, who gives a damn? Right? There was just there's no. And science, all they did was criticize scientists. It's like Sarah Palin was like, they keep trying to just study the genetics of fruit flies. Look how they're wasting our money. Yeah, I fully understand why genetic studies focus on Drosophila. I get what they're doing here, how they've identified what Hox genes are, because you have to have something that only has a 3-day fucking lifespan if you're going to go through thousands of generations to see how this works.
Well, because as we all know, time flies like an arrow, but fruit flies like a banana.
Oh, wow.
Here all night, folks.
Try the veal. She came right up to me. She's on my mic stand. You probably can't see her. She came right up to me, touched my nose with her tongue, and now she's like doubled over and my microphone is going away because of her body weight.
I love this so much. I love when we have guest pets on the program. It's the best part of the show. I mean, you're the best part of the show, but also we love the snakes.
Well, thank you.
Yes. Well, and we should probably go to Q&A at this point, I think. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we do some Q&A?
I'll just ramble pointlessly.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's do that with the questions. Let's see. We have a snake related question up first. Someone is wondering if you've ever experienced any people, particularly Christians perhaps, who are afraid of snakes just because of the Genesis story. Like, are people actually like mad about snakes in your experience?
Yeah, there was one that I heard. They were criticizing me for having snakes because snakes were demonic. Since all snakes descend from the talking snake in the mythical garden, that means that all snakes are demons, not animals. They're demons. This is the 21st century.
What an interesting assertion.
Yeah.
Or as one of my favorite visiting professors once said, how does it go? That is a belief that transcends an empirical understanding of the data.
What a wonderfully polite way to insult someone.
I loved it so much. As soon as he said, I said, can I write that down? And he said, sure, I guess. I've been saying it ever since. Wow.
Now, mind you, what I told you, she just crawled up on my mic stand. She crawled out of her enclosure. All I did was open the door. So she crawled out of her enclosure and crawled out over the lamp and crawled out over the mic stand and came up and gave me a kiss on the nose. And then she turned and doubled back. She's going back to her enclosure.
I love that. She just came out to say hello.
And
I
now she's
realize
putting herself away.
I'm very much anthropomorphizing, and that is probably not the best with snakes. I imagine they don't have very many mental processes that would be analogous to those that we experience. But what is your sense of that? I'm going to get us off topic, but what is your sense of your relationship with the snakes and their relationship to you? Like, to what extent do you feel like there's meaningful interactions?
Well, in the case of the one I'm dealing with right now, she really is putting herself back in her enclosure. When I take my retic out, retics are reticulated python, popularly heralded to be the most intelligent of all snake species. I take him out. We bring his tub, the travel tub, because you don't want to have a snake loose in your car. So we put him in a tub, locking tub, and then we have it with us, so that when he reaches, because all snakes are introverts, they can socialize, but they got a limit on how much they can put up with. And so my snake has the ability to put himself away. He'll hang out, he'll see everybody, he'll crawl around on everyone, and he has done. He's gotten down on the ground, come back up on the other side of the table, crawl on that next person. Instead of trying to run away, he's crawling up on the next person to go and reaching out across the table to go meet the people at the other table. That was another reason they cleared away so fast. But as I said, when he reaches his tolerance limit, he eases himself back into his enclosure, and once he's down in the enclosure, I put the lid on and he's good for the night.
Wow, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I like it. Okay, all right, back on track. David, would you like to ask Aron another one of the questions?
Would love to. Also love that story about the snakes descending. That's yeah. What was it? Well, so you mentioned and now we're all going off to tangents. But it was reminded of why we shouldn't engage in space travel, because that's where the fallen angels were, hence why we never found any life. And so by embarking on that, we are, thwarting God's will and entering into the land of demons. That was back in the Ken Ham Answers in Genesis days. Oh my gosh, good times.
Yeah, I'm impressed that at some point my country stopped asking how stupid are we and started asking how stupid can we be?
Yeah, hold my beer.
And celebrating. For a long time,
yes.
you probably remember this, for decades, people have been bragging about how stupid they are.
Yes.
It bewilders me.
The anti-intellectualism is intense. I don't get it. I don't.
Narcissism run amok.
Yeah,
I actually mentioned Nichols's book on the death of expertise, just for those who, want to.
And not only is it no longer an insult to call someone stupid, but it seems to be a prerequisite requirement to be a VP choice.
Mm. Well, speaking of silliness, I have a question on last week. I have a person that was interviewed by a Catholic missionary in his channel, and he said that even scientists accept that science has dogmas. What
science
would
has
you
what?
reply? Dogmas.
There are a couple of things in science that are called dogmas. They're not literal dogmas. I wish they wouldn't use these terms like that. You have doctrine, you have things that you are required to believe, but there's nothing in science that is required to believe. There are set principles, and that's the best you can get, and even then you're welcome to try to challenge it. If it's really well supported and nobody has any confidence that you're going to be able to do that, maybe they'll just throw that word in there to make the challenge more enticing.
So you would put it as like a bedrock principles rather than, it's kind of religious, unassailable,
bedrock principles. I don't even know if I'd go that far. Okay. We have things that we understand up to this point. And if it's wrong, fortunately, the scientific community has the same opinion on this that I do. If I'm wrong on something that I think of as a bedrock principle, I want to find out I want to find out that I'm wrong as fast as possible so that I will stop being wrong. Creationists, religious, defenders of the faith already know they're wrong. They don't care.
Well, that brings us up to the third question someone asked, which is what brought you out of neo-paganism?
Much like with other religious perspectives, it was just coming to the realization that there's no truth to it. I believed everybody in the 1970s believed in all sorts of paranormal crap. Look at all the science nerds who bought into Star Trek, for example. Gene Roddenberry was an atheist. Spock still can do a mind meld. All these episodes, they have telekinesis and things like that. These were things that everybody believed, that the power of the mind or whatever. There was no truth to any of that. We all thought that parapsychology was a real thing. We thought that ectoplasm was something that had actually been gathered and somebody has in a vial somewhere. Nope, all made up, just complete bullshit. And here I am thinking that there's legitimate science, that there's a legitimate basis for this, and that as our research continues, we're going to discover more and more and have a better, more solid understanding of this. No. 50 years into near-death experiences, and we still can't substantiate that there's a there, to the point that the former advocates of that very study have lost interest in it. Same way I lost interest in transcendental meditation and all of that. I can't show that there's a substance to go on. It's not that you have to prove it wrong. It's that I can't show that there's any truth to it in the first place. And that unsupported assertions have zero credence, exactly like claims that have already been proven false. Just because you say something's true doesn't mean I'm going to believe you, doesn't mean I should believe you. Show me that there's a there, or else we don't have anything to talk about. Show me that you didn't just make it up. And no, I don't have to disprove your hallucination. I don't have to disprove your fever dream. You have to show me that there's reason to believe you. You don't have to prove it absolutely. You can't prove it absolutely. Give me reason enough to keep listening. And if you can't do that, why do you believe it then? Never mind, you don't have a reason. Completely emotional. People have admitted to me that they base their belief perspectives on faith. And I asked this one woman, I said, what if you had a time machine? What if you had like a TARDIS? And we go back to first century Israel, Palestine, whatever. And we were able to find Jesus. We hire somebody to translate Aramaic. We go, wandering around the town. We find Jesus, which I don't think you can do. But let's say that we find Jesus and you get to watch him get crucified. And then you can continue to watch him rot for a week and never get up again. Would you still believe, if that were the case, if that turned out to be the case, would you still believe in Jesus? And she said, I know you're going to be disappointed by my answer, but I would hope that my faith would be strong enough to keep believing even when my eyes tell me otherwise. So even when you have proof that you're wrong, you're still going to believe that you're right.
Yeah, that almost, that's hard for me to wrap my brain around. But, I say that as someone who used to have similar beliefs to that, like I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I remember growing up hearing things like that. The most important thing is to have faith. Your faith should be able to overcome anything. It's a virtue. And I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with the anti-intellectualism. If we put down learning as a worthless pastime, then
yeah,
that undergirds that.
And celebrate credulity as a virtue, being unreasonable.
Yeah.
So that if you're wrong, there's no way to change your mind. There's no way to improve.
Not ideal. Not ideal. All right, we got time for one more question, I think. David, do you want to pick one of the remaining questions to ask? We'll leave it to your good judgment.
Let's see. You know, you kind of alluded to this a bit earlier, and admittedly, this is going to be a little self-serving given where you are. But what do you like better, given all the activism, the conversations you're part of, one-on-one discussions, you know, broader debates, or being on call shows? On call shows.
I'm not a fan of
Call-ins.
debates, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I really not. I mean, I want to. I don't like the format of talking past each other, you know, for 10-minute opening statements or whatever, and you don't actually get to any kind of communication at all until you get the interaction, and then you really don't get it until you get to the Q&A. So for me, the debate really doesn't even begin until then. When somebody comes up and they say, when they throw out the questions, and the questions ideally should be answered by both people. Because when I first started on Usenet, I noticed that this was how it worked. Somebody would throw out a question. The scientists would answer the question, and the theologians would try to answer the question. And that was when it became obvious who had the goods and who's full of shit. How do they both answer the same question? Or if they just refuse to answer that same question, or if they just come up with the same bullshit excuse every time for every answer. That's how God did it, and that don't prove nothing. Those are the two you need. That's it. That didn't prove anything, and that's how God did it. And the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I don't have to answer anything. Oh, and flood geology.
Oh boy.
That was caused by the fall, or that was caused by the flood. Really? You got 6 answers, and they're all wrong. But they apply
Checkmate,
to everything.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and people can see that. So I agree. The Q&A is the only part I want to hear about.
So I do like having conversations, and I often invite people to have video hangouts with me on a series that I call Why Do You Believe? The sad thing is how few people will take those invitations. They all want to argue with me to death in writing, but never off the cuff, never on the fly. Why? They tell me how they'll destroy me if they ever get in a debate with me. Well, really? And why is that? Because you have a prepared statement and you know how to read the prepared statement, but when then we get into cross-examining, that that part's coming, right? It's not just that we read our prepared statements. There's going to be cross-examination and then Q&A, and you're toast in both cases. Let's have the discussion. Let's just have a discussion. Nope, won't do it. Because they have no idea what they're talking about, ever. And that's biblical, because that's just like the biblical authors. They didn't have any idea what they were talking about either.
I love that. That's biblical. Oh, good times. Okay, well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for coming and hanging out with us and bringing the snakes along too. This has been great fun. We are about at the end of the show, but it's almost time to go to the hangout. Do you have time to stick around for the hangout to answer
How
any
long is the
questions?
hangout?
Well, the hangout goes like until people go to
Whenever you want.
bed, but
Okay.
but
Yeah,
as
I do have a lot of other things that I'm trying to work on at the moment. So
fair
pressing
enough.
deadlines and everything. So I'm afraid I won't be able to hang out for that.
Oh, no problem at all. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll just go ahead and wrap up then, and then we will still have the hangout. So everybody
Okay.
else stick around and hang out, but Aron's going to dip out. So let's go ahead and wrap up. Is there anything you want to leave us with before we close out? Or anything else you
I will
didn't get a
be
chance
in
to mention?
Sarnia, Ontario, in August. I forget the
Ooh.
dates for BajaCon. If anybody knows what that is, that's August 9th to 11th. I'll be there with Hemant Mehta, David Fitzgerald, Josh Bowen, and Seth Andrews and Forrest Valkai, and so on. So
Yay.
if you want to come to that. Otherwise, I'm not doing travel like I used to. That was I had a crazy travel schedule up until COVID.
I understand.
Yeah, my travel schedule had gotten to the point where I realized before COVID shut shit down, I realized I can't keep up with myself anymore. There's too much.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Also, I realized I kind of like being at home sometimes.
Yeah.
I hadn't tried that in a while until I was forced to. And I realized, that's not bad. I do like having time to listen to my audiobooks and chill in my house.
Yeah. Good.
I love it. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Yes, thank you for coming. You are welcome back anytime, you and the snakes. We definitely appreciated it and learned a lot also about snakes, which is awesome. We have a lot of snake fans in here. Oh, yeah, and let me read the poll results as well. I almost forgot about that, and then we'll wrap up. So the poll questions were, how old were you when you first met and interacted with someone who did not share you or your family's faith? And 20% of people said too young to remember. 27% said 10 or younger. 27% said 11 to 20. 13% said 20 or older. And 13% said not applicable or don't know.
13.
And then 13.
13.
Wow, you remember it
say
specifically.
This was my family's faith. This is the weird thing. I was never a creationist.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone I ever met was a creationist until I was 13.
Interesting. So how did that impact you when you finally met someone else? Was it validating?
Well, the thing is, while I was never a creationist, I never believed that God created all the separate species and all of that shit. I did believe that there was a global flood because everybody tells that lie. And it was one of my teachers when I was 13 who laughed in my face when I mentioned the global flood and told me there was never a global flood. It's completely impossible. We know better than that.
And you've been very salty about these things ever since.
I needed to hear it that way. It was a lie that I had believed. I needed it to be explained as a lie that I foolishly believed.
Yeah. I love that. Don't you love it when a teacher knows exactly how to present something in a way that a student is just going to get it? That is so valuable.
If he'd been polite to my feelings, I would have just remained in delusion for a longer time. And I would have been much older before I figured out how stupid I was. So thanks to that teacher.
I love it. Yes. Thank you wherever you are, teacher, for helping us learn. And that goes to the second poll question that we asked, which is, how old were you when you first learned a scientific concept that contradicted a prior belief you held? And 37% of people picked primary school. 30% said secondary school. 7% said college. 17% said post-college or as an adult. And 7% said never. And 3% said not applicable. See, I always put that option in there. Somebody found that to be useful. Or maybe they just picked that to make me feel
example,
better.
because I used to argue for something that I called intelligent design before anybody else did, because I used to think that there were forces of intellectual forces behind the universe somehow. I didn't believe in God. There was a poll that shows that like 1/3 of scientists believe in a God, and another 18% did not believe in a God, but did believe in a higher power that is not a God, which I thought was amusing. And I was, at one point, I believed that that things happen because they're destined to happen, or the powers that be want them to happen, or something like that. And so when I challenge somebody, I'm taking a course on evolution in college. I'm damn near 30. When I ask them this question, they said, well, there's no reason for that hypothesis. And they reasoned with me very patiently, and I realized that I don't have grounds to stand on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. Well, we are on to our third and final poll question then. On a scale of Indiana Jones to Aron Ra, how do you feel about snakes? And I will just say that the winning comment was at 33%, hiss, you're never around when I need you. So we have a lot of snake fans in here. Although the second most popular answer choice was, I hate this question. So
I would have included the question because you want to go on a scale from Indiana Jones to me. And you had all these quotes in the middle. If you forgot to put in up the right there toward me thing, trust in me, just in me.
Ooh. See, we should have added that one.
All right.
That's great. Okay. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed learning about snakes and all of the other topics you talked to us about. Is it okay if I drop the links to your YouTube channel and your website in the
yes,
chat?
and my Patreon channel.
Yes.
I mean, things are getting tight. So
yes.
I need all the help I can get.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if I don't know what it is about the ever tightening financial situation, but will you shut up? I'm on camera. But things are always getting tighter. So if you at patreon.com/ARONRA, I really do need all the support I can get. And also there's links on my videos. If you want to do a one-time donation on PayPal, I find I'm perpetually broke.
Understandable.
Yeah.
I also dropped a link for the is it Ophedia playlist?
Ophedia, yeah, the playlist.
Ophedia, yes, yeah. So if people want more content, they know where to find you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you. And everybody, don't forget to join us next week, same time, same channel. We have Ross Blocker of the Ono, Ross, and Carrie podcast. Will be here to tell us about his infiltration of Scientology. He had a bit of an adventure, it looks like, in the church at the Pacific Area Command Base, Big Blue. So we'll be hearing about Ross's Scientology adventure next week. And then the following week, we're going to have a familiar face back. Someone named David Teachout is going to be talking about secular death and dying.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Skip that episode. I'm sure it will be terrible.
It'll be more uplifting than the title, tells you. So.
Yes.
The last
thank you for that. Yeah.
The last speech that I was able to give, I gave it the title. I knew that the title was going to play into the speech well. It was called the morality of murder.
Nice.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I knew this was going to be a risk, that I was going to be talking about this, but I really was talking about death with dignity, the death penalty, abortion, other ways that we approach death. And I knew that it was going to be my funniest speech and also my most emotional speech, and that it was going to be a fucking roller coaster.
Do you have a link to that speech?
Yeah. Where do we find this speech?
Because I want to cry and laugh at the same time.
Yeah. I don't know. I grab it for you. Somebody grab the morality of murder. It's on my
channel.
channel.
I'll find it. I'll go do a Google. I'll be right back.
It was just a few months ago. It was we were on a Caribbean cruise, the Free Thought cruise. But anyway.
Okay, we're gonna look for it.
I'm gonna bail.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for coming. This was such a delight.
Bye-bye.
And take care. Okay, and we will now continue wrapping up, and we'll go to the Hangout. So it would help if I unmuted myself. We will now continue wrapping up and go to the Hangout. So don't forget to follow us on all of the social medias. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, as well as YouTube, where you can find our previous RfRx episodes. And before we go, David, do you want to tell people a little bit about the cool things they can do if they volunteer here?
Well, besides merit badges and hearing about, reattachment of fingers, uh, we're a volunteer-led organization. Period. It is because of all the people that give their blood, sweat, and time. Hopefully more of the latter than the former. That makes all this work. So, and we're all here because it matters. We actually, well, give a damn or not give a damn because we're not damned anyway. And so literally everything you see tonight, all of the stuff we've talked about and all of our services are all run by volunteers. The website, all of it, everything that is happening behind the scenes that makes things happen are all run by and done by, volunteers. And as such, we are constantly in need of more people with mad skills or just skills. They don't have to be mad, but just skills to help out because frankly sometimes people need breaks and it takes a village, so we need as many people as possible to make this work and continue to providing everything for all of you. So lots of jobs. We have the helplines. We can, finding vetting, posting good resources, hosting support groups, supporting, the just the website itself, IT support. Oh my God, we need IT support would be great. And there are so many things in the future that, frankly, I think, the machinations of our president, Daryl, would very much like to need help with and growing. So, and as just noted in the chat, sometimes we don't even need skills. We can teach. You just need the compassion, like the genuineness of caring and wanting to help others. To apply for the volunteer, you can fill out the form on the main page, which I do believe. Yes, Kara is way ahead of me because she's on top of things. Thank you, Kara. You're amazing. And you too can join them here in our volunteer space. So recoveringfromreligion.org/volunteer. We're still looking for web developers, volunteer trainers, support group leaders. So by all means, drop a line, let us know what you would like to help out with.
Yeah, thank you. And with all that out of the way, Gail, fabulous, lovely executive director who's joining us from afar. You want to wrap us up?
Yes, thank you, Kara. Thank you, David. I'm sorry that I missed saying thank you to Aron. He was instrumental in our big fundraiser not too long ago. And if you were a participant in that in any way, we are so grateful. We had a huge blowout. It was so exciting. It's not over yet. I'm just going to drop a little teaser in. It's not over yet. Please watch our socials for information about the remainder. If you recall, Glenda had a painting that we were going to put out to draw interest in the fundraiser, and that is yet to be resolved. So pay attention to that. We would love for you to join us for whatever that's going to look like, and I'm not sure what that's going to be, other than just putting the teaser out there. So, and we are so grateful to Aron for helping us with that, and all of our guest hosts. And so, the takeaway after tonight, I just love hearing Aron talk about the variety of things that are part of his life, the snakes and the animals and all of that. But my main takeaway is that people come away from their beliefs in all manners, in all kinds of paths, in all kinds of journeys. And we never know where that's going to come from. And to follow up with what David was saying, if you are interested in being a volunteer, and we'll provide all the training, if you want to be part of this, it is so exciting and humbling to be part of it, not because we're having this big victory over religion, but because we're watching someone come into their critical thinking. We're watching someone come into their freedom and their independence. And that is it is the most exciting and humbling thing I can imagine. And if you would like to join us, we would love for you to be part of our team, to get to participate in that. You may have the background and the skill set and the experience that will speak to somebody, whether that's in a support group or whether it's on the helpline or maybe even in the online community where folks go into different parts of the spectrum of what they have in common. And you may have a conversation with somebody and make a difference in someone's life as they're trying to work through this heavy, sometimes really heavy part of their journey. So enough said about that. We would love for you to join us if you would like to. We are about to launch into a big campaign, a big push to promote our upcoming fall excursion. That's in September. Now is the time to jump in. If you'll go to the fall excursion tab on our website, now is the time to select your places. We have had several venues. This is a new venue this year, so it looks like it's new to all of us. And if you'll kind of look through that tab, there's all kinds of information on what the accommodations are. There's different levels. There's different costs. We have had this enormous successful fundraiser just to help defer the cost. If you need a subsidy so that you are able to attend, please reach out to us. We have those available. So take a look at that website before we start our big summer push on filling those slots if you would like to participate in that. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for participating in the fundraiser if you were part of that. I encourage you to go visit the webpage on the fall excursion and find out about it and join us in partner with us in any way that whatever that means to you, whether as a donor or as a volunteer or just coming to the excursion and having a rocking good time with us in September. Thank you for coming. Please stay for the hangout. It's a good time. Lots of great conversations were started tonight. So we hope to see everybody hanging out, and we'll see y'all next week. Thanks.